Jason smiled as he walked in the reception, putting on his most dashing smile, and the receptionist swooned before he dashed in. "What are you doing here?" Rhea asked, looking shocked. She was looking truly breathtaking in what he assumed was a figure-hugging red dress, a peek of her full creamy breasts showing. "I am here to work," he said as though it was the most natural thing in the world. "Work? You are meant to start on Monday," she shrieked, and Jason gave her a smile. "What can I say? I couldn't help myself. I am very eager to work with you," he said, plopping himself on one of her chairs as he sighted black fishnet stockings covering her long legs. "That and so much more," he said, and she saw her get excited and heard the little hitch in her breath. "Well, if it is work you want, I already have some ideas on the joint advertising plan," she said, bringing out some large-looking files, and Jason couldn't help but cringe at the sight. He quickly stood up to stand behind Rhea's chair, extracting the books from her hand. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice sounded shaky and vulnerable. "You know what I am doing," he said, helping her up from the chair and encircling his arms around her waist, pulling her full as to his front, loving how warm she felt, and then bending his head to leave kisses from her neck down to her collarbone, sucking and nipping. She angled her neck to give him more attention as he roamed his hand around her stomach and then up to her covered breasts, feeling the full weight over the cover of her tight dress. He badly needed to feel more flesh, and so his hands moved to the zipper behind the dress, and as he attempted to push it down, she jumped away from his hold, though he was on fire. "I can't do this," she said, shaking her head and running out of the room. Jason just stood staring at the open door, wondering what had just happened. Rhea looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, wondering why she kept doing that, why she kept melting in his hands, even though she knew that he was wrong for her. When she knew that she felt things for him, when she knew that it was not just host sizzling attraction. She didn't know what it was, but she knew that he would never love her, and that was why she could never love him. That was also the reason why she should stop letting him affect her. She had been skeptical about the project. She wasn't sure if she could still keep on working with him, if he kept on doing what he was doing. She straightened her red gown, used her fingers to smoothen her hair, and smiled in front of the mirror before leaving the bathroom. "So this isn't going to work," Rhea said to Jason immediately as she entered her office. Jason was comfortably sitting on her chair, his legs crossed on top of her desk. "If we are actually going to work together, there will be no form of physical contact involved," Rhea said, hoping the words came out as badass as they sounded in her head. "Do you get that?" she asked Jason, who was looking at her, a smirk firmly placed on his lips. "Sure, whatever you say. I am serious. If you touch me, I will resign from my post and get my brother Seb to team up with you," she threatened, and enjoyed the look of horror that appeared on Jason's face as she said that. "Sure, no touching unless," he said. "Unless what?" she asked. "Unless you initiate it," Jason said, throwing his shiny shoe-clad feet from the table to the ground, straightening his perfectly ironed white shirt and black pants as he walked out of the office, leaving Rhea staring open-mouthed at his back. "I can avoid him. I can do it. I will not initiate any contact," Rhea said to herself, wondering what a mess she had gotten herself into. "But he's so handsome and I don't know what to do," Rhea moaned to best friend Rory. Aurora had returned from her honeymoon over a week ago, and it had been 3 weeks since Jason started working at the office. He had been so professional that it had been frustrating. He actually had a knack for ideas, and that he had a brain only made her want him more. "I know I told him not to touch me, but I didn't really mean it like this. Why on earth did he take me seriously?" She moaned again at her best friend, who just kept quiet and let her moan on. They were in their high school hangout, a simple diner called the Dreamer's Diner. It wasn't where anyone would expect two daughters of billionaires to be, and that was why they always came there. It was like home. It was a plus that no one would look for them there. Does he not like me anymore? That must be it. That was why he just agreed and he didn't put up any complaints. He doesn't want me anymore, Rhea said, and Rory just sighed. Aren't you going to say anything? Rhea asked, and she threw another French fry into her mouth, munching on it, like her life depended on it. I don't know what to say to Rhea. If you want him so much, why don't you make a move? Rory said, and Rhea just glared at her. She knew her friend wouldn't be saying that if she knew who Jason was, if she knew that Rhea was talking about her husband's best friend. I can't do that, Rhea whined. It would seem like she lost their little competition. Well, I can't judge if you will tell me nothing about the guy. I don't even know his name, Rory complained, and Rhea just kept her mouth shut. She wasn't ready for a lecture. Have you talked to RM recently? Rhea asked Rory, trying to steer her away from the topic. Well, no. Everything has been so hectic lately. I haven't spoken to her in a week. We should have called her now, but she would be working, Rory said, sounding tired. Yes. You should call her though. She would definitely have a solution to your problem, Rory said, and before she could say more, her phone rang and Rory stood up to take the call. Aurora was right. RM was good at giving advice. She was that friend that you went to when you needed someone to tell you the truth, someone that wouldn't sugarcoat it or tell you half of it, but the entire truth, and Rhea loved her for it. I am sorry, Rhea, but our meeting will have to be cut short. I am needed at the school, Rory said, and she picked up her cream bag, matched with her cream top and white pants. Rhea was very proud of her friend. A year of marriage had changed her, made her much more mature. She was certainly not the person she was a year ago. But about the guy, I think you love him and you aren't blind to see it. You should go for it, Rory said as she hugged Rhea before going out to her car. Rory just sat in the cafe thinking of everything. She knew she wasn't in love with Jason. She couldn't be. Falling in love with Jason would be purposely hurting herself. She couldn't do that to herself. Rhea sat at the dining table, picking at her untouched plate of salad. Rhea, what's wrong? Why are you not eating? Rhea's mother asked. Leah Robinson was a small pixie-like woman with bountiful curves, short brown hair, and big brown eyes. Apart from the height, Rhea looked exactly like her mother. She had gotten her height from her father. Rhea herself was, while her mother was. I am fine, Rhea mumbled and continued playing with her salad. She didn't know why her mother was pretending to care. She was well aware that she didn't. There was unusual quiet at the entire table, but Rhea wasn't surprised. Teddy, Brian and Max had gone back to college, and they were usually the life of the dining table. Her father was running late from work, and so the only people at the table were Leah and Seb, her two least favorite people. I'm going to bed, she said, purposely scraping her chair on the ground, loving the cringe that she saw on her mother's face. But her mother didn't take the bait. In a few seconds her frown was gone and a smile took its place. Rhea huffed and excused herself, leaving her mother and her favorite son to chat. She missed Teddy and she missed her father. She couldn't wait until they came back home. She entered into her orderly room, plopping herself on her well-made bed, and called RM. Hey babe, she said the moment RM picked up the call. Hi, how is it going over there? She asked. Well, it's fine, everything is perfectly fine, she said sarcastically. All right, talk to RM, her friend said, and Rhea let out a long breath. Where do I start from? Well, you could try at the beginning. RM said, stating the obvious. And so she told RM about the guy she met at the club. The handsome one with the lean, long physique. The one that she had her very first one-night stand with. One of the very few guys she had slept with. The one that turned out to have a fiancé, or so she thought. And then she told her how she had found out he was Playboy, and even a model, and then she had moved on. She had bagged herself a boyfriend, a nice one, but yet again he had appeared at Rory's wedding, and she had slept with him. Again, and there was a broken condom, and she had snuck out, and then she met him again at her father's office, and they were presently working together for the next 3 months. And when she was done, Rhea felt so relieved, like a huge weight had left her shoulders. She felt good. You fucked him at Rory's wedding? RM asked, and Rhea couldn't believe that was what she got from the entire story. No, not at the wedding, at his penthouse. She clarified. And there was a broken condom. Are you sure you aren't pregnant? RM asked her. No, I took a test. I am good, Rhea said, referring to the test she had taken 2 weeks prior. I am not talking about the pregnancy. The problem is that I told him not to touch me anymore, and I am sort of regretting that decision. Rhea moaned. It's Jason, isn't it? RM said. She wasn't asking, she was stating. Rhea couldn't help the feeling of fear that came. She had done well to hide the identity of Jason. She knew she had not once mentioned his name. What do you mean? Rhea asked, feigning ignorance. Fuck, it is him. You are fucking Natie's best friend. RM asked. It was obvious that she had figured it out. But it annoyed Rhea how RM said it like it was a bad thing. She didn't get why no one wanted her to fuck him. So what if I am fucking him? I am not good enough for him, she asked, and from the other end of the line, she could hear RM heave a tired sigh. It's not that, on the contrary, it is him that isn't good enough for you, RM said. Look, Rhea, I have met this guy. He doesn't do relationships. You deserve better than to be treated like a one-time fuck. The truth was that Rhea didn't care about what she deserved. She wanted Jason. We have had sex twice and I felt good. That isn't too much to ask, is it? Rhea, it's your life, and whatever decision you make, I am solidly behind you, RM said, and 4 hours after the call ended, Rhea thought, and then she made up her mind that she was going to do it. She was going to initiate it, starting the next morning. Darling, can I come in? Her father said, his big frame covering the door. Rhea couldn't help the smile that crept up her face. She jumped up from her bed and gave her father a big hug. Daddy, she said. The reason why Teddy and her related so well was because he was exactly like their dad, very affectionate. For her entire life, Rhea had always been close to her dad. He had always been the one to go come for her recitals, the one to play princess with her. He would even play dress up. How is my baby girl? He asked, giving her a kiss on her head. Your baby is fine. You have just been so busy lately, she whined, and he just chuckled at her and roughed her hair up. It's not funny. Teddy is gone and you are never here, she whined. You should try and connect with your mother more, and also with Seb, her father said. He probably meant well, but she was angry. She is not my mother, Rhea seethed, not wanting to talk about it anymore. Hope the project isn't stressing you, that white. Her father asked about changing the subject. He knew she didn't like to talk about Leah. No, he is fine, Rhea said. She then proceeded to tell her dad all about it, remembering how good Jason seemed to be at coming up with ideas. And then she slept with her father's arms wrapped around her. She felt safe, and she hoped when she woke up, it wouldn't be all a dream. Rhea woke up the next morning with a mission, and that was to make the first move. She spent hours trying to figure out the best dress for that move. She didn't really have any sexy office clothing. But by the romance novels that she read, she figured a skirt was the answer. And so she picked an above-knee black pencil skirt, which was tight and molded to her curves. She then picked her a red, sexy button-up shirt, and she left the first 2 buttons open, leaving a peak of cleavage, loving how powerful it made her feel. She decided to go with her hair up, leaving her neck bare for him to find enticing. She also opted for bare legs. She had shaved and they were as smooth as a baby's bottom. She finished with some red, fuck-me heels, and then started on the makeup. She made it heavy, but not too heavy, just enough to draw him to her, and when she was done, she stared at herself in her floor-length mirror and decided that she loved what she was looking at. Rhea came down and had breakfast. Her father said. It was obvious he had not seen her because he wasn't screaming. It was one of the reasons why Rhea wanted her own place, as big as her parents' house. She had absolutely no privacy, but she loved her father too much to move. "I think I am going to skip Dad," Rhea shouted, thinking of how she could sneak out before her father could see her. "There isn't much to be done at the office, Rhea. Stay and have breakfast," her father said, his tone breaking no argument and so harming herself with her best puppy dog face. She made her way down the stairs and to her father. By the shocked look on her father's face, the puppy dog look didn't work. "Rhea, what are you wearing?" her father asked, and Seb just smiled in his seat. Rhea was already feeling Brian and Max's absence, as they had just started college. "Rhea looks very pretty, honey," Leah said, running her hand up and down Rhea's father's arm, which seemed to calm him. Rhea stared at the woman she looked so much like, the woman that she shared so many features with. Rhea knew that calming her dad was not going to mend their relationship. "Love the skirt, Rhea," Leah said, and Rhea just stared blankly at her and focused on eating her toast. Her father tried to bring up conversation, but all in all it was a very boring breakfast, and Rhea rushed out the moment she could, taking her bag and the keys to her SUV. "I need to buy a new car," she thought to herself, deciding that an SUV didn't work with her new look. She made it to work in record time, and by the looks that she was receiving, it was quite obvious that her makeover was successful, and she made it to her office. Jason usually came around 11 a.m., and so she cleared her schedule and waited for him. Though she barely had anything to do with the project at hand, that was what everyone was working towards. The hand of the clock seemed to be moving much more slower and tiring. It seemed like an eternity had passed before Doris, her secretary, informed her that Jason was here to see her. Rhea couldn't explain the joy she felt. Her nerves were all over the place and her hands were shaking. He was finally there. "Please send him in," she quickly said into the receiver the moment she calmed herself. As Jason came in, she could see the surprise on his face at her new look. He just gave her a smile and started talking about ideas on how to market both products together. "We should open a chain of small stores for household materials, and so we can sell both furniture and electrical materials. We will have one brand name that goes with all, like joining Rixo and WL together." Rhea knew what he was saying was making a whole lot of sense, but her mind was elsewhere. And as he made descriptions with his long fingers, she could imagine what wonders those fingers would do to her. "Is it any good?" Jason asked. "No, I mean yes," Rhea said, stumbling over her words. She couldn't even remember what Jason was asking about. Looking at her dazed state, Jason just chuckled at her. "You know what? I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk at all. I want to do something entirely different," she said suggestively, and then standing up from her chair to sit on the desk in front of Jason, There was a surprised look as well as a smirk playing on his lips. He looked marvelous in his white shirt and gray trousers, with a gray tie over his neck. The clothes were perfectly sculpted to his lean and long body. "Come and play with me, Jason," Rhea said, giving the most sexy look she could muster. Hoping she didn't blow it, Jason didn't look like he needed any more invitation. He stepped up from his chair, loosening his tie from his neck, and began to stare at her like a piece of art. Rhea grew hot under his gaze. Walking in front of her, he pushed her legs apart, prompting her to spread her legs as the skirt would allow. She could feel her breath hitch in her throat, her heart pounding in her chest in anticipation for what was to come. His fingers crawled slowly up her thigh and bid for him to get there faster. Rhea shifted closer to him, luckily for her. Jason didn't seem to be in the mood to tease her. He shifted her black lace briefs and plunged into her core. She had shaved that morning, and so the lack of hair on her core made the pleasure much more heightened. She had always thought he would be marvelous with his fingers, and she was so very much right. He had added yet another finger, using his thumb to flick her clit, and in a few minutes she had reached her peak. She was screaming and moaning as she came all over his fingers. Jason then looked into her dazed eyes and lifted his fingers, which were coated with her juices, to his mouth, licking them like they were coated with ambrosia, and Rhea felt like she was going to come again. For the next 7 weeks, Rhea had the most mind-blowing sex of her life. She felt inebriated, like a new being. She would look up to every day in the office, because she knew she was going to see Jason. She knew that when he would come for their meetings, she would get bent over a table, or get thoroughly fucked on a chair, maybe even in an elevator. It had made her days so much brighter. She then walked around with a huge smile on her face. Even Seb noticed the change in her, and when anyone would ask, she would shrug and say she was just happy or make up an excuse, like how she started doing yoga. Rhea could tell that her friends were worried about her, but she could also tell that they loved to see her happy. She would now smile and make small talk with Gianna before she went to her office. She was much more friendlier with the drivers and all the staff. Rhea was in her own world, and that world revolved around Jason. Rhea knew that she was getting way too attached to Jason. She knew that the day he wasn't able to make it to the office and he didn't tell her, that was the day Rhea knew the first-hand meaning of paranoia. Her mind went to various places. When she gave him 27 missed calls, she didn't give a damn about desperation. Her mood had changed that day. She shouted at everyone, screamed for no reason. She was also sick. She puked her guts out that day. He sauntered into the office the next day, like nothing had happened. Rhea had jumped on him, hugging him like her life depended on it, and in some ways it did. She proceeded to shout at him, but on seeing the odd look on his face, she stopped. She realized she was just being dramatic. That day she realized how much her life was tied to his. That day she couldn't work, she couldn't do anything. Compared to her state, Jason seemed unaffected. He had hugged and then kissed, telling her how much he missed her, and then they proceeded to have mind-blowing sex. It was one of the days she would never forget. To Rhea it was special. Their work had been going marvelously well, and with 2 weeks to go until the big reveal, Rhea and Jason had come up with a name and a catchy advertisement plan. In 2 weeks' time, there would be a party to celebrate the joining of the two companies for their new household brand. And with just 2 weeks to spare, Rhea knew that she had to act fast. Throughout their entire affair, it had only been in the office. He had never taken her back to his green-themed penthouse. They had never gone out for lunch, and nobody knew about the relationship. Rhea knew that they were basically having a fling, and that if she didn't act fast, it would end in 2 weeks' time. She wanted to give the relationship a try. She knew that they had something more. She knew by Jason's care that it wasn't one-sided. And so that day, like others, she set out to work in a maroon skater dress that was above her knees and a pair of black net stockings, in a bid to tell Jason about her plans. She was in her office, putting finishing touches on the plan when Jason arrived. She was chewing a stick of licorice that she had gotten a bit addicted to over the months. She had no idea why, but the sweet sour taste appealed to her. It was weird since she hated it before. She had been having weird cravings for a while. "Babe," he said, moving to kiss her on the cheek, the scent of his cologne filling her nostrils. She suddenly felt the urge to sneeze. "We need to talk," she said in the most serious tone she could muster. A few months ago, she could have sworn that she wanted nothing more than sex from Jason, and though RM had warned her that it might be only sex that Jason wanted, she still felt that he had something for her, that it was more than just sex between them. "Talk?" he asked. "Talk? Why talk when we could do much more favorable things?" he said suggestively as he moved his chair to hers, turning hers so that they could face each other, with no barrier between them. "We really need to talk," she said yet again. Her voice wasn't as sharp as it was the first time. She started fiddling with the hem of her dress, studying the patterns, sewn on it. "What are we doing?" she asked, raising her eyes to meet him. She could see he was looking nervous, but certainly not as nervous as she was. What is this? Are we in a relationship?" "Why, I'm just your booty cal," she asked. It came out much more harsh than she expected, and she could see him wince. "Why does it matter?" he asked, shrugging his shoulders. "Of course it matters. I am not sure of what I am doing. It's driving me crazy." It was true, though Rhea had claimed she wanted to go with the flow. It wasn't just her. She was an overthinker. She badly needed to know. "So what is it?" "It's nothing." Hearing those words from Jason made her gasp. It was as though he slapped her, the way he classified everything they had as nothing. "I don't believe that," she said, shaking her head, willing the tears that filled her eyes not to spill, not to overflow and fall on her cheeks, not to make her look weak. Jason heaved a deep sigh. He seemed like he was struggling with himself, but his next words proved otherwise. "I know I didn't tell you anything, but I don't do relationships. Happily ever afters are not my thing," he said. The struggle had left his face. He looked sure of his words, and Rhea could feel anger rise in her. She suddenly felt like throwing a heavy object at him. It wasn't that she didn't know all this about him. She had just desperately thought that their relationship would be different, that she could in some way change him, that one way or another he could love her. It turned out that she couldn't be more wrong. "Why didn't you say that and spare me my time?" Rhea asked. She was angry, but also sad. "I was enjoying it too much. I didn't want it to end," Jason said, shrugging his shoulders. "That's bullshit," she cried, losing her calm. She stood up from her seat. She couldn't sit in front of him anymore. "I think it is best for the both of us if we end this now," Jason said before she couldn't utter any other words, and then left the office. She stared at his soot-colored back, and immediately he closed the door behind him. She screamed. The tears that had been nestled in her eyes felt like a broken dam. She cried, and when somehow she had carried herself up and made her way home, she saw her father, who had taken one look at her tear-stained face and took her into his arms, her cry into his shirt, her mascara staining his white starched shirt. She held on to her father and cried like she was a baby again. She cursed that she had gotten so attached to him, but somehow she knew that she would do it again. After the incident with Jason, Rhea found it hard to work with him, and so the planning of the party was done with Seb. Rhea felt extremely proud of herself for putting Jason through torture. Her sadness had slowly turned into pure hate. The fact that she couldn't tell anyone about it made it way worse. She didn't tell her friends because she was afraid of an "I told you so." She didn't tell her dad because her father would have severed his relationship with the Wheatus and turned down a profitable business opportunity, and Rhea didn't want that. She didn't tell her brothers because they could make extremely rash decisions. And so she went on her days with a fake smile on her lips, cringing any time she saw Jason's Ferrari, and her mind filled with vengeful thoughts. When her father had asked her why she was crying, she said she was having PMS, which was a huge lie since she hadn't seen her period in 2 months, but she knew that she had always been irregular. With less than 2 weeks till the party, she had no time to grieve and no time to carry out her violent tendencies. She had no choice but to bury herself into her job. Unsurprisingly, she had been put in charge of decoration. So all her days consisted of picking the perfect venue, the perfect color of drapes, the perfect type of chandelier. It was frustrating to say the least. But she enjoyed it. It took her mind away from everything. She would chew her licorice as she shouted at all her team members to get the job done. If they were less frustrating and irritating, she wouldn't have to shout at them. There was Edward, whose excessive use of cologne caused bile to rise up her throat. She had ordered him to change it immediately. There was Yvonne, a thin and pixie short lady with a whole mane of brown hair. Her voice grated on Rhea's ears, and she certainly didn't like to hear her talk. All in all, it took a whole lot of patience and self-preservation to make the party work, and when they were finally done at 4 p.m., she felt good. "Okay, I think we did a great job, right?" she said, and she could see the rest of them mumbling among themselves. She had no idea what they were talking about, and she simply didn't care. "You guys can now get ready for the party, but inside the hotel. No one should be far away." "I am going home." Indy, you are in charge," Rhea said, pointing at Indiana. She had the loudest voice and the meanest glare. She could take care of them. She made her way to her new car. It was a sleek black Porsche. She had gotten it a week before, all in a bid to make herself feel better. As she got inside, she breathed in the new car smell and started up the engine, loving the speed as she made her increase the music to the highest. Immediately she got to her father's house. She threw the key at one of the chauffeurs to help her park and made her way to her room to get dressed. Inside the house, she was greeted with the nicest surprise. "Teddy," she said, rushing to hug her little brother. He returned the hug in equal vigor, carrying her under her arms and swinging her around. She had truly missed her brother. "Oh my gosh, when did you get back?" she asked. She had no idea that he would be home. "I just wrote my last exams, and I am finally done with college, and Dad insisted that I should come for the party." "Oh my God, the party is in a few hours. I need to get dressed," Rhea said, shimmering out of his arms to get ready for the party. "Say hi to Max and Brian for me," she screamed as she went up the stairs. She had already put out her clothes for the party a night before. More than a week ago, she had gone shopping with Rory and had picked several dresses. She had plans to wear one of them for the party. A night before, Rhea had picked a red ball-like gown, with an off-shoulder style on top, tight around the bust, and then flowing from stomach down with a full skirt. She was to wear it with a pair of red stilettos, and with a gold clutch to match. After arranging her attire on her bed, she called for her makeup artist, Erotica, to come and do her job. In a few minutes, Erotica and her team came into Rhea's room with all their equipment. Rhea was ready to be dolled up. In an hour's time she was done. The makeup was flawless, since it was done by a professional. It was not too heavy, but not too light either. The lash extensions, coupled with the black liner, made her eyes pop out. During the shopping trip, Rory had said Rhea had added weight, but she shrugged off claims. But as she tried on the dress, only after a week, she realized that it was even tighter than it was the first time she tried it. "Ma'am, it's too tight," Erica, the makeup artist, said as she tried to help Rhea zip up the dress. Rhea sucked in her stomach and told Erica to zip it up, hoping and praying that the zip didn't accidentally rip. Thankfully it didn't. Rhea studied her expression in the mirror. Her hair was down and flowing on one side, leaving the other side of her neck bare. The off-shouldered style also made her shoulders bare. Her full breasts seemed ready to pop out of the dress. If she didn't know any better, she would say her boobs were increasing, but she was sure they weren't. At least that was what she told herself. Erica's employees helped her put on her heels and picked up her purse. Rhea was ready to party. When Rhea arrived at the party with 3 of her younger brothers, the party was already in full swing. Her brothers had gone around to socialize, and Rhea was just frustrated that she was working on the day of the event. Rhea stared at the beautifully decorated hall and gave herself a mental pat on the shoulder. The entire hall was decorated in silver and midnight blue, giving the hall a starlight theme. The drapes were of silver and blue, the contrast only bringing out the building. Silver chandeliers hung over the audience, and small tables were arranged all facing the podium, which was also designed in such a fashion. It was a black tie event, and so different types of suits were seen everywhere. The hall was packed with people, each of them making small talk with a glass of wine in their hands. Rhea could catch a glimpse of Rory and her husband, but they were too far to catch up with. Her own father was seated on the main table beside his wife and Seb, together with Teddy, who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. On the opposite side of the table, he could sight Mr. White and a woman that she couldn't place. She couldn't see Jason anywhere, and for that, she was absolutely glad. She wasn't sure what she would do to him if she actually saw his smug face. She wasn't sure she wouldn't hit him with the pointed end of her shoe. "Ma'am, Miss Robinson, we have a problem," Yvonne screeched into her ear. God, she hated that voice. "What?" she asked, glaring at the pixie-like woman. Rhea wanted absolutely nothing to go wrong. She needed nothing to go wrong. There is something wrong in the kitchen," she said, shifting her legs. Rhea didn't understand why the small woman was telling her that. "What are you standing here for? Go fix it," she shouted at Yvonne, who looked very close to tears. "I can't," she muttered. "I tried, I really did, I swear I did," Yvonne continued, and Rhea groaned. They had officially succeeded in ruining her night. Chaos greeted her as she got into the kitchen. The caterers she had hired were meant to cook at the venue so as to have the food warm and ready. Everyone in the kitchen ran around like headless chickens. There was smoke at one point, and a caterer seemed to be fighting with a fire. "What is going on here?" she screamed at the full room. Ma'am, there was a mix-up in the delivery," Yvonne said, and that only pissed her off. They had called her because of a bloody mix-up. "Then fix it," she screamed. "Well, the bus broke down," Yvonne said, "and there is no service. We need to take one of the company cars to help, but they won't give us any because we are unauthorized personnel." A tall woman, whom Rhea assumed was the head chef, continued in a no-nonsense tone. It was a tone that Rhea didn't like, not one bit. "Do I have to do everything?" Rhea asked, referring to no one in particular. In the next few minutes she borrowed a company car, which needed none of the normal procedures since she was the boss's daughter. By the time she was done clearing the mess, she had missed half of the party. On returning, she was met with the sight of Jason and Seb, presenting the program, the same one that she had worked for 3 months with Jason to plan. Seeing Jason brought about a rush of emotions. First she was angry with herself for being too much of a coward and ditching the project last minute, leaving Seb and Jason to take all the glory. As the crowd cheered them on, Rhea felt like flailing her arms and screaming. She wanted all of the attention, she craved it. She wanted everyone in the hall to know that she planned the project. She certainly didn't want all the glory to go to her stupid brother. Secondly, there was Jason. The last time she had seen him was 2 weeks before, and he had succeeded in breaking her heart, in wounding her and eliciting sadness from her. But presently she didn't feel sad. She felt anger, red and hot. She felt like violent anger. Truthfully, Rhea had never been a violent person. That was RMS thing. In her entire life, she had only slapped one person, and that was her bully in middle school. The slap. Rhea wasn't even sure that the tap she had put on Mirabelle's face that day would qualify as a slap. Truthfully, it hurt her hand more than it hurt her cheek. So red-hot anger was new to her. It felt like there was a volcano inside her, and it was ready to erupt on Jason. She could basically picture red-hot lava spewing on Jason's perfect self. The visual brought some kind of weird joy to her. She barely listened when her father began reading his long speech. She was too busy glaring daggers at Jason and the busted blonde that was hanging off his arm. She had never been so jealous before. It was as though she should bring out lasers from her eyes and burn them. There was also Seb, whom everyone seemed to be congratulating for a job well done. All of these put a damper on Rhea's mood. "Hey Rhea, you are looking good," Rory said weakly, and Rhea just glared at her beautiful-looking friend. She had always been a shitty liar. Rhea knew that she might have been looking beautiful when she first arrived, but after the kitchen incident, she knew she looked exhausted. "I know I look shitty. You on the other hand look wonderful," Rhea said to her friend. Before Rory had gotten married, she had never been a dress girl. She usually loved oversized shirts and sweatpants, but she had actually gotten quite a lot of dress sense since then. She was wearing a midnight blue dress. That was the same with the theme of the party. It was figure-hugging with a slit at the front, making her look sensual. "Where is your husband?" Rhea asked her friend. "He is around mingling," Rory said, scanning her eyes over the crowd before settling and then stopping at point. "Oh shoot. I am so sorry, I got to go." The words had barely reached Rhea's ears before her friend scrambled out of her way. Rhea had no idea what had just happened, but she was pretty sure that Rory would have an excuse. She left the spot in which she was standing and made it to the buffet table. She was getting quite hungry. Her eyes danced over the several dishes that were arranged in the transparent boxes, all of them seemingly calling her to take a bite. The sauced turkey and chicken, the lasagna and the dessert, the cakes and ice cream, all of them making her want to jump in glee. The sweet smells of the food wafting through her nostrils, making her taste buds water, was interrupted by a strong offensive odor. Rhea could feel the body come closer to hers. The terrible smell became suffocating. She felt a rush of bile up her throat, and before she could even hold it in, it came all out and landed on a pair of black shoes. She didn't know what to do. He just kept staring at the vomit-coated shoes, afraid to look up and get familiar with the owner of those shoes. "Shit," the voice said, and Rhea couldn't even be more sure. She quickly sprinted out of the ballroom, and to the direction that she knew the ladies' room was. She rinsed her mouth, gaggling out all the water immediately she got into the restroom. As she looked into the mirror, her eyes couldn't help but water. She couldn't fool herself for any longer. Something was wrong with her. She somehow liked licorice. She had added more weight. Her breasts were tender. She had an extraordinarily large appetite. She hadn't seen her period for 2 months, almost 3, and she hated the smell of Jason. She had even thrown up on his shoes. She couldn't get herself to be fine. She needed to take a test. From when Rhea was a little girl, she had always been an organizer, a planner, and she loved making plans and ticking of dates on the calendar. On her room wall was a bunch of to-do lists. She would wake up every morning and make a long list of what to do and would carry them out to the ladder. It used to drive her family crazy. She had everyday plans with the minor plans for each activity. She had weekly plans, monthly plans, even yearly plans, and there was one big plan, the plan for her life. It said that after middle school, she would go to high school and have perfect grades, have one boyfriend in junior year, stay with him till senior year. She would go to Harvard and study business administration, come back home, work for dad, have a boyfriend, a good and responsible man, and get married, and at 25 start having kids, 3 to be exact, a boy named Harry, and then girl named Cynthia, and the last child another girl named Poppy. Before having Harry, she would go for her MBAs, and even after getting married, she would still be the CEO of her father's company. She would be the next line. She had made that plan when she was 9 and had followed it to the latter until then. She had just graduated from university when she met Jason, and she was presently. She hadn't found her husband, and Richard was supposed to be that man. Rhea couldn't exactly pinpoint a reason why, but she had a bad feeling that her plans were about to go spiral, that they were about to go out of her control, and it had to do with the child that may or may not be inside her. "Rory, please, I need your help. Can you get me a few pregnancy tests?" Rhea said into the phone, her hands slightly shaking. She was praying and crying in her head that they would all be false. "Pregnancy tests?" Rory asked from the other end of the phone. Rhea might have been feeling erratic, but she knew how her friend must have been feeling. She knew that Rory wanted to get pregnant badly. She had been married for a little more than a year, and she was getting quite desperate. Rhea would hand the baby over to Rory if she could. Transfer the entire pregnancy to Rhea. "What do you need pregnancy tests for? You can't be pregnant, right?" "Right?" she asked again, and Rhea growled at her numerous questions. "Rory, just get me the bloody tests and stop buggering me. I am in the bathroom," she said before abruptly ending the call. She was starting to feel woozy as she stumbled, holding on to one of the toilet doors as everything went black. "Rhea, wake up. Are you okay? Come on, wake up." Rhea opened her eyes to see a worried expression on her best friend's face. "Sorry," Rhea apologized before trying to prop herself up with the help of Rory. "Steady," Rory said as she stumbled a bit. I'm good," she said, standing on her own without the aid of Rory. "Did you bring the test?" she asked Rory, knowing if she was pregnant, what was on her mind. "Are you crazy? You just fainted, and the only thing you can think about is a bloody test." Rory seethed angrily, and Rhea just stared at her friend. "You know what? We will get you out of here, out of that gigantic dress, and then you will take the test," Rory said, her tone giving no room for argument. Not that Rhea actually wanted to argue. All she wanted to do was take the pregnancy test, have some licorice, and sleep forever. As she rode in the back seat of Rory's husband's car, she wondered what Jason would do if he found out she was pregnant. She knew that they would never have the relationship that Aurora had with her husband. They would have no shared kisses and cute couple goals. He said it himself that he didn't do relationships. The best they could have was co-parenting, and that was only if she kept the baby. She had texted her father that she was leaving the party, so that they didn't worry too much about her. She had also told her team, whom seemed very happy to see her go. But she hadn't even caught a glimpse of Jason. Not that she wanted to see him after she had barfed on his shoes. The sound of the engine dying signified that they had finally reached their destination. The sight of Natie's house had always marveled her. She couldn't really believe that someone with so much money would have a house so small. It was the kind of house a bank worker will have, and certainly not to the CEO of a billion-dollar company. Nate Walters was a simple man. As she walked into the house and straight into the guest bathroom, with Rory tailing closely behind, Rhea quickly took the bundle of sticks from Rory and peed on them. The next minutes were the longest of her life. It was even longer than when she first took the test 2 months back. Her heart was pounding in her chest. "Rory, I am scared," Rhea said to her friend, who was holding her hand and waiting with her. Rhea knew that the results had shown, but her eyes were closed tight, not wanting to see them. She couldn't even open her eyes. "What does it read?" she asked Rory, whom she was sure had her eyes open. "You should open your eyes, Rhea," Rory prompted, and Rhea did. The sight that greeted her was not a surprise, but she wasn't sure what to make of it. All 3 tests showed positive. It was obvious that she was pregnant and her life was over. She stared at the test, not sure of what to do. She wasn't sure if she should laugh or cry, if she should be happy or sad. She knew that her situation was not the worst in the world. She knew that people got pregnant at 15 with no parents and no source of livelihood, but she also knew that it wasn't the best either. It wasn't a typical story with unhappy ever after. She didn't have a husband or a fiancé, or even a boyfriend. She knew that Jason, who didn't do relationships, wouldn't want to be a father either. She knew her father could be extraordinarily strict about those things. She might be his baby girl, but he won't let her work while pregnant. All her plans would end. There was also the fact that she knew nothing about being a mother. She knew absolutely nothing about babies. She was about 5-years-old when the twins were born, and the only thing she could remember was that they were cranky children. Someone like her best friend, Rory, would be much more suited to motherhood. Rory adored children and even taught them. Rhea, on the other hand, couldn't even visualize herself with children. She thought they were noise-making attention seekers. She hadn't even attempted to hold a child in all the 23 years of her life. She wasn't cut out to be a mother. "You will be fine," Rory said, bringing her arms around to hug her, probably on seeing the horrified look on her face. And so throughout the night, Rhea thought and thought about all the possibilities and all the plans and how her life would become. She thought about what she would do about her situation, what being a mother would mean if she actually wanted to be a mother. She tossed and tossed on the unfamiliar bed in Rory's guest room, and come morning, she had dark circles under her eyes, but yet she had no solution to her problem. "Congratulations, Miss Rhea. You are 13 weeks pregnant," the happy-looking doctor said to Rhea, showing her pearly whites. The doctor looked way more happy than Rhea felt. She was sitting in the pristine white doctor's office. She was holding Rory's hand in hers. She just had a pregnancy test run, and the doctor just confirmed that an abortion was out of her options. Not that she would have been able to go through with one, but it angered her immensely that she didn't even have that option. It was like the universe was against her, like the fates didn't just want to see her happy. She gave the doctor a tight-lipped smile as she continued talking about vitamins. She could barely make out the words of the doctor. Her mind was far away, trying to figure out when exactly she had gotten pregnant. Her mind flitted back to Rory's second wedding and the broken condom. "Doctor, I can't be 13 weeks pregnant. I took a test about 10 weeks ago. It came out negative. I also saw my period. I can't be that far along. I can't be pregnant at all," she continued in her head. She was desperate and the math didn't add up. She wasn't really ready to have an abortion, but she was running out of options. Some of these tests aren't 100%. The only way to be totally sure is through a blood test, which you did, the doctor stated, and Rhea couldn't help as the feeling of disappointment washed through her. and the period you claimed to see was probably spotting. It happens quite often." The doctor explained to her. She wasn't looking at her friend, but she was sure Rory was taking mental notes. "So, there is an actual living baby inside my stomach, and it has been there for the past 3 months," Rhea said slowly. She was talking to the doctor as much as she was talking to herself. The entire situation scared her out her wits. She knew all about the science of babies and all, but it all seemed so surreal to her. She felt like she was dreaming. "Yes, there is." Rhea instinctively touched stomach. It was actually never flat. It always had that small pouch of fat that she loathed. The pouch was still there. It didn't feel any different. She didn't feel pregnant. There was the fact that she had been pregnant for 3 whole months. For 3 full months, she had lived her life, not knowing that another human resided inside her. That another human depended on her food and life. That another human was connected to her. The fact was chilling. She drank alcohol and coffee, not knowing that it was forbidden, and yet she actually didn't have a miscarriage. Ignorance was truly bliss. But she wasn't sure was ready to have another human depend on her, another human lean on her, another human look up to her like she was perfect. She wasn't sure she could do that. She didn't even like the woman that the world knew as her mother. In Rhea's mind, she had never really had a mother. She wasn't sure she could be one. "Is it too late for me to have an abortion?" Rhea asked. She knew it was a stupid question, but she felt it was better not to have a child at all than to have a child that she would disappoint, one that would hate her, one that she wouldn't even be able to be a loving mother to. The doctor looked quite appalled by her suggestion, as though no woman had ever asked for an abortion before. She couldn't be sure, but Rhea felt the woman looked upon her as a saint, one who would die before she would ever harm an innocent child, and now the woman's thoughts of her were tainted. "You are already past 12 weeks, so no," the woman said slowly. Her cheery disposition was gone. It was changed with a tone that was filled with anger. Rhea knew that immediately she left the office that the woman would gossip about her, about the 2 young, rich girls that had asked for an abortion. "You have a checkup at 15 weeks and you have about 27 more weeks more into your pregnancy. You are due in February," the woman said again, thus bringing another bad chill on Rhea. By February, she would have an actual child, a whole human being, a crying one, a baby. "I am so happy for you, Rhea. I am so going to spoil your baby," Rory said happily, clapping her hands in glee, as they both sat in the back seat of her car. Rhea couldn't share in her friend's happiness, though she was the one pregnant. Maybe because she was the one pregnant, she knew that her friend loved children and longed for some of her own, as so it was easy for her to accept. But that couldn't be said for Rhea. She had absolutely no interest in children, and there was the fact that she was very single, and there was Jason. "Have you thought of baby names?" "I was thinking for a boy Dylan and for a girl Ivy. What do you think?" Rory asked, and Rhea groaned. She couldn't still wrap her head around the fact that she was pregnant. Talk less of naming a child, giving a child a name that he or she would answer all their lives. It was crazy. "I'm not thinking of baby names, Rory." "Oh, I am sorry. I didn't really put myself in your shoes. There must be so much going on in your mind. Like you are going to tell your brothers and your father. Oh, what will he think?" Rhea hadn't actually thought of how her father and brothers would take the news of her getting pregnant through. She knew that it could only be disastrous. And there is also telling the baby's father. Who is the baby's father? Rory asked, her tone seriously. Rhea had actually forgotten that she hadn't told Rory who the father was. She thought of lying to her friend, but she knew she couldn't hide it forever. "Oh, I know, it's that guy you brought to my second wedding, Terry or something." Rory was talking about Richard, and Rhea felt like pinning the pregnancy on him, but decided that the poor guy didn't deserve it. "It's not him." Then who is it? You may know him. Okay, you do know him. It's Jason. Rhea said quickly before she could second-guess herself. Jason? You mean Jason? Rory screamed and Rhea fought to urge to cover her ears. Like the Jason that I know. How did that happen? Rory asked and Rhea just sighed. It's a long story. Out of sight. Rhea was basically going about her life pretending that she wasn't pregnant. Since she couldn't get rid of it, then she would just pretend it wasn't there. After staying in Rory's place for the weekend, she reluctantly went home. She had also spoken to RM over the phone and her best friend had basically said I told you so. It didn't really matter that RM had doubled